We know that the daycare issue is not going away. It's going to be an issue in the 2015 general election. The New Democrats are promising a $15 a day daycare system based on the Quebec model. The Liberals are promising to do something. They're unclear on what, but they do say that the Harper Conservatives are not doing enough. Well, is there a daycare shortage? It's an issue that Andrea Mrozek and the Institute for Marriage and Family Canada have taken a look at. Helen Ward doing a report for you guys. This is the first time that someone's looked and said, hold on, what do the numbers actually say, isn't it?
That's right. So Helen Ward really dug into those numbers, and the data show from the City of Toronto website that there are daycare vacancies in the City of Toronto. So this refers to institutional daycare center spaces, and those are funded at quite high levels. And the vacancies have been present since 2009. That's what the data show. So,
but hold on. Even in your report, you publish an ad that says that there's only licensed daycare spaces for 1 in 5 children.
Yeah, that's right. So I found the data revealing surplus spaces to be shocking personally, because those ads are there. Only 1 in 5 children have a licensed daycare spot. What those ads mean is that of all the children in the country of Canada, there are, I suppose, 20% spaces in daycare centers. But what that doesn't talk about is what parents actually want to see with regards to their daycare choices. So that's one form of daycare, and it's not the most popular one. It often is ranking lower than home care choices, parental choices, having a parent or a family member at home, and then local daycares near you in your community. This type of care is often the last choice for parents, but nonetheless, it's the focal point because I suppose that some people are after some form of nationalized daycare system.
All right, I want to read from Helen's report for you. It says, many parents, including mothers in paid work, do not seek out daycare spaces because they prefer other forms of childcare. The assumption that every child needs a daycare space is vastly inaccurate and out of line with the diverse ambitions of Canadian parents. So, this reminds me of the Parliamentary Budget Office report, which claim that there's so much money going to parents who don't have any daycare expenses because they only benchmark against these types of institutionalized centers. They seem to get the attention, they seem to get the money, they definitely get the subsidies, but that's not what parents and families want.
Yeah, and the Parliamentary Budget Office, I think, took a stats can term. It's not to necessarily blame them. We need to change the conversation and understand that childcare means the care of a child, regardless of who is doing it. Helen Ward happens herself to be a single mother who is low income, and she makes the point it's very frustrating for her to constantly be told you're part of the wealthy elite because she arranges her lifestyle in a manner that allows her to take care of her kids in the way that she thinks is the best for them. So, yeah, we have a problem on the conversation. We often think of working mothers versus stay-at-home mothers, and those terms aren't necessarily fair. I think we might be pleasantly surprised to find that the mommy wars totally dissipate because there's a lot of moms who are doing a bit of work from home, starting a business from home, mompreneurs, we've heard of these terms, and no more do these old labels work as well in the new world of work and childcare and how families are choosing to make it work for them.
Well, I also know families that have decided that they would arrange, the mother and the father arrange their work schedule around finding a childcare solution that suits them. And sometimes that is a licensed daycare center. Sometimes it's working with the grandparents. Sometimes it's working with the lady down the street who runs a home daycare.
Yeah, exactly. I should say some parents do have a hard time finding care, particularly in Toronto, and in part that's because mothers are told to get on wait lists when their children are still in the womb, and they may or may not get off those wait lists after they find the care of their choice. It may be with difficulty that they find the care itself, and we need to acknowledge that. But at the same time, the wait lists create this insecurity and anxiety precisely because people are told to get on it in many multiple different places, and so the wait lists are vastly overestimating the actual demand for this particular form of care, but it does create fears and anxieties for parents who are wondering what's coming next for us.
All right, but there are vacancies, and that's what your report found. So from the report on page 7, between January 2009 and October 2014, the total number of vacancies among all age groups in Toronto daycare fluctuated from a low of 3.58% to a high of 6.64%. By way of comparison, the rental apartment vacancy rate in Toronto as of October 2014 was 1.6%. I can tell you there's lots of apartments in Toronto.
Yeah, that's right. So again, the data stands for itself. We need to have a discussion about what that data says and not what, for example, union-funded advertising wants us to believe about that data.
All right. One of the other things the report found was that the idea of someone like a Helen Ward, we always hear, well, let's subsidize daycare so that the single working mother can get out there and find a job, and this is a good thing. A lot of conservatives will support that as well when they won't support other types of daycare subsidies. But yet her report says the minority of children who are in daycare centers access the bulk of government funding. Since wealthier families are more likely to have their children in daycare, not only does the system pick winners and losers, government subsidies do not necessarily help those who need it most. Did that surprise you?
Again, it did surprise me. The vacancies surprised me. The fact that daycare is being accessed by wealthier families, not as surprising because we do see evidence of that in Quebec right now. But I think that there's a lot of stereotypes or myths floating around about childcare, and we do need to examine why there are those surplus spaces. And this is also where there's lots of subsidies. So clearly the government money being spent isn't reaching people who need it if they can't find care, and otherwise you have the spaces sitting empty, which isn't a good use of funds either.
In the meantime, the government has upgraded and expanded the universal child care benefit, giving parents more choice. Some would say it's not enough money, but it's still more than what some have promised for a universal child care program.
Yeah, that's right. And I was pleased to see a CBC report over the weekend saying that when low-income families get their own money in their own pockets, they're not spending it on beer and popcorn. That was the remark from 10 years ago, I think Scott Reed. It was a very controversial thing he said. And so now there's research from this past weekend indicating that when families get money, they actually spend it well on the care of their children.
All right, who would have thunk it, giving families choices. Thanks for joining me, Andrea.
Thanks very much, Brian.